I'm Jeff Bond, and welcome back to the Steward Chair, where we bring business leaders insights that go beyond the balance sheet to help you build a more resilient and impactful organization. Today, I'm speaking with one of my favorite leaders, Enrique Alvarez. He's the co-founder and managing director of Vector Global Logistics. To me, Enrique isn't just a leader who manages a supply chain. He stewards a community of global entrepreneurs, including myself. We're exploring his results-only work environment model that he's adopted that removes the when and the where of work to focus entirely on the what. This conversation is for every leader who feels the weight of top-heavy organizations. Enrique is going to share why he believes leadership is often over-glorified and why being a passionate follower can sometimes also be the most innovative thing a person can do. We're going to dive into radical transparency, the power of sharing mistakes, and why being the best at giving bad news is a competitive advantage. Before we get started, if you haven't already, please follow this podcast and share it with a leader who is ready to take the pressure off and lead with authenticity. Let's get into it. All right. Well, Enrique, welcome to the Steward Chair. I'm so glad to have you here, my friend.
Jeff, it's always a pleasure. I'm looking forward to a nice conversation like the ones we usually have. And thank you for having me. I'm honored.
Honor too. And for all the listeners, Enrique, you have been someone where a lot of my innovative business ideas and innovation ideas come from. You're well-read. You're really, I think, forward-thinking in terms of your management and your leadership style of how you empower people and you elevate a people-first culture on a global scale. And so I just want to thank you for being such an inspiration to me. And I really can't wait for everyone to hear some of the insights you have to share with me.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much for all those kind words. I know that I've been lucky in this life and I have a really good team. I've had really good parents. I have amazing siblings. So at the end of the day, yes, I don't deserve half of the things that you said about me. It's just been a pleasure to be here with you and getting to know you. And of course, to share some of what I know and some of my mistakes with your audience.
Well, let's jump in. I have really been thrilled to explore the concept of business leadership as stewardship. And this show really is for business leaders. It's for people who own their own business or are currently stewarding the business that they've inherited from previous leaders. And they've been doing it for quite some time, like you have. And we really view business stewardship as a long-term responsibility with a lot of short-term decisions that need to be made. But it's caring for what's been entrusted to us, whether it's people, mission, company, community, all the above, but it's really for the flourishing of others and the health of future generations. But I'd really love for you to reflect on the word stewardship, what it means to you, and how you look at that from the lens of being a business leader.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I guess stewardship for me has different meanings depending on kind of like the circumstance that you're in. And of course, like the different circles that you're moving, maybe with your friends or as a parent or as a business owner or as an entrepreneur. But in general, I think one thing that all those kind of slightly different definitions of stewardship have in common is really inspiring others. For me, being a good steward is trying to do your best, not being afraid of making mistakes, understanding that we are flawed and we're humans and we're definitely going to screw up things multiple times, maybe even a day, but then also being humble enough to recognize when you're wrong and being brave enough to go and apologize to people and then try to just make a positive impact through the life that you're trying to live. That's for me the kind of definition of what I say stewardship is for me.
And why is that important to you?
Well, I think it is important because we're all our brand and our own personal humanity, I guess, is critical in the way that we go through this world. And we're not going to live for many years anyways, right? So humans in general don't actually get a chance to enjoy this planet as much as some other species or plants. But at the end of the day, it's important. It's just who you are. And I think this is something that I've learned with age. I wish I actually would have known this when I was younger, and probably it was the same for you, right? But it reaches a point in time when you're like, you know what? I don't care what everyone else thinks about me. This is me. And again, I'm not better or worse than anyone else. I'm pretty average, and I think most people are average. And I think that it's okay to just try to be yourself. I think it's just less energy, it's more efficient, and I think you end up enjoying life a bit more.
I think that's hugely empowering for executive leaders of their organizations to say that. And yes, like you, it's occurred to me later in life, and it's completely shifted my perspective of what's the most important thing. And so when you think about it, and now being kind of more authentic and true to that, where do you see that showing up in your life now as a business leader? That maybe, if you were to advise your younger self getting started, you would say, hey man, take the pressure off yourself. Like, just be real. What's kind of some of the advice that you would give your younger self with the grand aspirations of becoming a leader?
Absolutely. Well, I guess the first thing would be it doesn't matter if you're a leader. I actually have I don't like kind of how we have used the word leadership these days. I feel like everyone is striving to be leaders, and if everyone's a leader, then who's doing? Who's following? I feel like the advice to my younger self would be okay to be a follower and be a passionate follower, and just if you find someone that's doing something incredible and it's doing something that you like and enjoy, then don't be afraid to just follow that person, right? I think yeah, leadership's a little bit over glorified these days.
I love that. And there's so much, I believe, that can be accomplished when you don't care who gets the credit and who's
Absolutely.
in
I think it's
charge.
a lot easier. It's a little more natural. It takes off a lot of the pressure. And I think it's important to try new things and to be creative. And innovation is driven by people really being okay making mistakes. And I think that's something that we need to continue fostering in the world and in the younger generations. And that's something I guess I try to instill in my children as well.
Hmm. Well, I want to talk about how that's showing up in your business, because I think that there's some key principles that have really poured into me that I think is really worth open sourcing to other business leaders right now. And one of those is your belief system in self-managing cells, which is really decentralizing autonomous teams, acting as entrepreneurs with ownership stakes. And you've done this so brilliantly within your organization. So talk to us about where this idea came from and how you're applying it.
Absolutely, and it's a terrible name, by the way. I wish I would have come up with a slightly different because the cell model. It's just such a
It's a
different
mouthful.
thing to say. It is a mouthful, but I'm clearly not a marketing guru like you are. So it basically came from a couple of observations in the supply chain industry. We thought that we could come in and change a little bit the way the things work. And one of the things that we saw is like this silo mentality to approaching problems. So you have in most companies very specific teams fully dedicated to importing products from China to the US, and some teams and some companies are even more detailed than that, to the point that you have a specialist just for the East Coast, one for the West Coast. And I think it's fine. I think it has a very important role in kind of the success of some of the companies having all these very clear silos. But I think at some point in time, it also makes your job a little bit more boring, right? A little bit less fun because you've been doing 20 years of experience importing things from China to the US, and you get to a level of expertise that at some point you take for granted. So we said, let's just break that kind of silo mentality, because what we really want and what we really do at Vector is tackle some of the more challenging problems around supply chains. So it's the complex regions of the world, is the expedited shipments, is the project cargo. So we're very white glove niche logistics company. And so the silo mentality did not work well for us because it doesn't guarantee that you're always going to give your best for every single shipment. And of course, on the other side, it doesn't guarantee that the employees are going to be empowered, excited, and learning constantly, which is also very important. So the model basically is set up in such a way that we have an operations director, a sales director, some admin team, and we have fully independent teams, and they have their own P&L responsibilities. And so every single cell can manage every single type of transportation: imports, exports, air, ocean, trucking, warehousing, customs clearance, so you name it. And I think that that model has given us the opportunity to grow faster because it's a very easy model to replicate. I mean, if we want to start a new cell, we basically just pair like an operations manager with a sales manager. We make them a cell and then start building the whole cell around those two leaders, giving them, again, all the technology systems and processes required so they don't have to worry about that, but then giving them the freedom to pursue whatever they want to pursue. And so it's interesting. It comes with a lot of different challenges as well, right? Because you end up with this very dynamic organization that is handling completely different things at the same time. And it's, I think for people that might not work for Vector, sometimes it might seem a little bit chaotic. But for us and for our clients, which is the most important part, they're delighted and we're offering them great service.
How do you reinforce it then when it seems to be getting hard, and how do you kind of remind people of the value of this versus the alternative?
Yeah, so it's a very good question. And the way to reinforce a culture like this is basically at two very different levels. One is the mindset, which has a little bit more to do with like who we are hiring. Here at Vector, we believe that if we hire smart people, that's all we need, right? I mean, smart people that are culture and value aligned with us, that is the key. We can teach people to do things, but as long as you have the right people, they'll actually be successful and they'll help us push the company forward. And the second thing is simplifying the key performance indicators. So every position at Vector has different KPIs. We don't believe in the 20 different KPIs and monthly reviews. And like we have at the very most 5, and then we just focus on those 5 and forget about every other thing. So it's very important. And it's a good point, right? This culture would not work without measuring results and basing everything on results, which is, by the way, one of the books that our culture is based on. Why Work Sucks is the name of the book.
Yeah, I want to get into that actually. So this is a perfect segue, because ever since you turned me on to that book and I've read it and I see how you're applying it, and I think about that as an emerging business, one that we're trying to grow. It's really been compelling to me because I think people really do value the autonomy. They value the trust. They value the ability to like exercise their agency and their creative approaches to solving problems. So talk to us about, just at a high level, for those who are unfamiliar with what a results only work environment, in the book, they call that a ROWE, ROWE, what it is, how you're applying it, and kind of the impact that you've seen within your organization over the long term.
Absolutely. Well, here, actually, I have the book for you guys.
There it is.
And then also I had the pleasure of interviewing one of the writers. So through our Logistics with Purpose podcast.
Oh, cool.
So
is that out already?
in. It's already out. Yeah, I think we interviewed her like maybe 1 year ago. So it's not even like a more recent episode.
Yeah, we'll
so
put it
I
in the show
strongly
notes.
recommend. Yeah, that would be good, because I think that she does a much better job in explaining how the culture works than I will ever do. Now, what it really means is you take the time and space component out of the equation and you measure performance by results and results only. So it sounds a lot simpler than, and I think that's because we're so used to some outdated ways of work. We have this notion of work being an office. We have this notion of work being a place that you need to be, or a certain schedule that you have to complete. And if you actually take all that out, you will realize that people are going to not only work harder and be more committed, but you will end up with more quality work, which is what we need for the kind of company that we are, right? For us, our service levels are the only thing that matters, and delighting our customers is the most important part. And I think that a culture like this has allowed us to truly work towards that goal in a very efficient way. So I think the pandemic was a good teacher to all of us. And I think we were very successful because before the pandemic, we've had this work results only work environment. And so when the pandemic hit, we were already working from wherever we were without having schedules. And so it was a good kind of test to the culture that we've been building. And now with technology and AI, like measuring certain KPIs has become a little bit more easier. So if you combine those two things, you end up with a very, very cool, very dynamic, very successful culture, which, by the way, it's all been my team. So I cannot take credit for this. I'm part of the team, but this is also something that's been developed day by day.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting. And I've talked to a lot of business leaders since you've turned me on to this about the concept of a results only work environment. And oftentimes the pushback that I get, or at least a contrarian view, is that there are some roles that it's really hard to measure what results look like. And so I'm sure that you've worked hard at looking at multidisciplinary roles within your organization and getting focused on how do you create a measurable outcome that you can look at in a performance conversation. So how have you gone about, I mean, you could give a specific role, but just how have you gone about approaching those kind of hard to define roles with creating metrics that allow you to measure against results?
Absolutely. And it's a very common question that I get as well. And up until today, people are still very skeptical about our culture. And it requires like certain individuals that could thrive in a culture like this. So it's not for everyone. Some people need a little bit more hand holding, a little bit more structure. Now, to give you an example, though, and one of the very simpler examples that I know is the role of a business development manager or a sales rep, right? So there's companies out there that probably measure things like how many appointments do you have, how many phone calls do you make, how often do you quote, and at the end of the day, those are definitely things that if you do a lot of will result in what we all want, which is more sales or new accounts. So now what we're saying is if it takes you 10 minutes of your day to reach the goal and close the account, then if you have 4 lunches or if you made 100 phone calls, does that really matter? Or is just a little bit of a band-aid that we're trying to put into the system so that then someone can police you and force you to do what you need to be doing? So it just gets like it's a very slippery slope. And I'm sure you can follow because you and I share a lot of this business sense. And all of a sudden you have all these massive organizations measuring all these different things that don't really matter for anything. Like we have a couple of suppliers, and I'm not going to name them or anything, but they have a certain amount or a quota of how many lunches they have to have per week. And so they always came to us and say, hey, I need to reach my quota. I need to take you out to lunch. I'm like, how is that? I like you. I will continue working with you. You buying me lunch or not buying me lunch is not going to change anything. But again, you get it. That's the way the companies are set up. And so we asked this person to just simply bring lunch for the office once a month. And hey, we'll take all free lunches that they can offer us. But I just don't think that that's the best way of managing a company.
Everything that we do with content strategy and podcasting, event strategy, convening moments in our business is all about building trust and human connection. And I don't think that that's earned, through a lunch. I don't think that that's a transactional thing. No. It's a relationship. It's someone that you don't think twice about, handing the baton to in a project or transacting business with, because that's the foundation of the business. And, void of trust, if there's a trust chasm, you're not going to be in business long, or you're not going to be doing business with those employees or those partners for very long, or those clients. And so I find this to be a much more human centric approach, to give people that sense of autonomy that they yearn for. Like they want to be seen for the creative approaches that they have to solving problems. And I have to imagine too that people's approaches to your business challenges introduce you to new ideas too, instead of putting them in a box. So have you discovered kind of new ways of going about problem solving, or more efficient ways, or things like that?
Absolutely. I think that's actually, as I mentioned before, right? I mean, having a good culture is better than any strategy that you can put together. And so, just by having smart, self driven, ambitious people working for you, and they work hard, and everyone works hard because they know that it needs a team to make Vector successful. I think they'll come up with ideas, and then the key to that is allowing people to try new things and making mistakes. And I feel like that's something that companies don't do often enough. Like making mistakes is very important. It's important for human beings. It's important for children. It's important to learn. And I think companies or some companies out there are a little bit afraid of making mistakes, and so employees are very hesitant of trying new things, and they stick to the old methods. So yeah, I think you're right. This culture definitely uh, helps increase our creativity and innovation.
And listen, these aren't just philosophies that you have. You've been on the Fortune 5,000 fastest growing. You guys are doing well. You're growing. Of course, there's challenges that come with tariffs and current state of
Yeah,
the world
it's
and all
been
that
a
stuff. That
fun
maybe,
year.
yeah, I'm sure it's been magical. But like, there's things that stifle growth, but also a lot of these things I think build resiliency in those times. And it allows you to navigate those in a way that when you come out of the other end of that, you have this trust established as a baseline, and then that you can build upon when you have less obstacles in your way like there have been. But one other thing that I think you do, and another principle that I think is so helpful to our listeners, is that you're radically transparent. And that's another philosophy that you have, sharing pay, performance metrics, openly sharing company financials. How important is that in terms of those other models working of the cells, the results only work environment? Where does transparency kind of, like, to me, that's the glue.
Well, and I think you have to take a couple of steps back to really and fully understand the whole model, because all these different components taken separately might sound interesting and great, but I think that when you actually understand how they fit together into the bigger picture, then that's when they're really powerful, right? So what we're trying to do at Vector, and we just happen to be in logistics, but it's trying to create entrepreneurs and business owners. Every cell, which are the smaller teams working independently and having P&L responsibilities, we actually are trying to give equity to the people that are leading those teams down the road. If you get certain milestones, you'll get certain equity. So when you're actually set up to create business owners and entrepreneurs, it is critical that you learn how to read financials, how to read P&Ls, how to be open. And there's no way that you can do that without starting with us, right? So to your point, everyone knows how much I make, how much the bonuses are. Actually, we decide how much money we put on the bonus pool together based on the company's performance. And I think at the beginning it is weird. Don't get me wrong, right? I mean, I think the initial reaction to this is like, that sounds off. I mean, this is going to be a mess. And I do have the privilege of starting with only 4 people, and then we have grown it from 4 to 180, and we keep growing. But so I feel like it's a lot easier when you're starting something from scratch, when it starts small, because the first 4, yeah, it was kind of weird that everyone knew everything, and there were some conflicts maybe when it came to compensation. But those discussions, treated them respectfully and openly, only made us stronger. And I'll give you a quick example, right? We had a bonus discussion, and someone got, I don't remember the amounts, but let's say like someone got 100, the other person got 80, and everyone knows how much everyone else is getting. So this other person that got 80 came to us and explained that he thought he 80 were low. He actually thought he deserved more, and he presented it in such a way. And given that we have the performance indicators, it's a much easier way to really compare one performance to the other. And so after reviewing the case for not even that very long, we made a mistake. And so the following day we gave him the extra 20, and that was it. And that made us better. We actually learned from the experience. It built trust, not only to the person that went from 80 to 100, but to the person that was gotten 100 in the first place. And I think that trust, if you really are willing to risk it, and I say risk it, quote unquote, it will give you a much stronger company on the other end. Now, have we dedicated a lot of time to talk and train and listen and argue and fight without being, I mean, aggressive about it, but just arguing with people. It's yes, but it's part of what we have to do in order to be true to our values, and we understand that that's the only way that we're going to be able to create good entrepreneurs. So
Yeah. I'm glad that you kind of paint that picture that it is hard at times,
it's very hard.
because a lot of people, when they hear these things on
No,
podcasts or they read them in books, they think this sounds like a great idea, but this is way too hard, right? Like there's going to
yeah,
be all this conflict and all that, but you invite healthy conflict in the organization, the ability to work out a debate, with somebody that has full transparency into the bonus differential and make a case for themselves. It gives you an opportunity to engage with them in a fair way and have that healthy debate and figure out how to move the business forward. We're always solving problems in business, right? And if we can't get out there and have honest conversations with one another, that's not the right team
right.
dynamic. So you're fostering what is healthy throughout the organization in terms of how they solve problems, whether it's through financial income and performance bonuses to the way they approach customer relationships. So I imagine that, opening up of that mentality has a trickle down effect into all those different areas.
Yeah, and one of the first things that I tell new potential clients is that we're the best at giving bad news. That's it. That's our competitive advantage, and I think it comes from knowing that it's okay to try new things, and it's also okay to make mistakes, and it's also the only important thing is to be honest, right? And I think that if you try to keep some of these things under the covers, or if you're trying to somewhat deceive some clients or telling them that everything's okay when it isn't, you're just limiting their ability and the ability of everyone to solve the problem, because you're starting to lose certain options that are not going to be there if you take longer to address them. And I think that's kind of a reflection or a direct reflection of the culture we have. And of course, now that we're a little bit larger, once we hire someone, it's a lot easier, right? Because you already have the momentum, and then the majority of the people here already understand how it goes. But it is still pretty interesting and fun to see like new people participate in this quarterly financial meetings, and they're like, are they really showing me all this? It's like, I'm like, should I be here? I'm like, well, if you don't have the information, then when we actually implement this initiative or that initiative, you won't have the whole picture or the whole context as of why it is important, right? I mean, and you learn a lot from yourself, and you learn a lot from the people in your company by trying to be as candid as possible. And I think that is important.
It's really encouraging. And I think for our chief stewards listening right now, too, what's also interesting for them to hear is that you're constantly living this out and reinforcing that across new international offices. So
Right.
you have a global company. And so cross-cultural difference, the way we approach business, the lived experience, the perspectives, the customs, they're all vastly different. And so how do you look at this from a global cross-cultural lens of making this practical for such a diverse organization?
Well, we have presence in the U.S. Our headquarters are here in Atlanta, Georgia, and we also have offices in Mexico. We have two offices in Mexico, in Monterrey and Aguascalientes. We have offices in Chile. We have offices in Peru, in Lima. We have an office in Ukraine, and we're actually trying to continue growing some other offices. So, one thing that I think it's interesting is that if you actually base your culture in very general values like results only or purpose driven, which is something that I'm sure you're going to ask me about in a minute. But I think you realize that we are a lot more similar than different, right? So yes, we have our team in China, we have a team in India, we have a team in Vietnam, and we have a team in Chile. And if you take all the people that I have had the pleasure to work with, the things that bring us together are way, way more than the differences. So it's interesting to see, and it's something that maybe wasn't expected. But now that we have it, I think the culture and the principles around being honest and transparent and focusing on results and not making judgments about at what time you come to the office or at what time you leave, or if you don't even come to the office, are universal.
Hmm. Yeah, and it seems like kind of basic human rights and
Yep.
a basic human desire that you can come together on versus trying to differentiate on customary beliefs or approaches, but just to give people some creative freedom to approach their work and to hold them accountable to the results and the metrics that you've set out and you've transparently discussed up front. So I love that. I love how you always talk about mistakes as an essential learning tool. And as a leader, I know you embrace that a lot. So what practices or mindsets help your team embrace the failing fast or adapting quickly or modifying systems rather than relying on what worked in the past?
We have again, this is where technology has helped us a lot. Like we actually have a performance portal. And so every employee can log in into the portal and check all those different statistics about the company and interact and coordinate. And one of the parts of the portal that I like the most is when we're sharing mistakes. And we are in supply chain, we're in logistics. Mistakes is just what happens, especially these days with everything that's going on with the tariffs and the geopolitical situations that we're facing and the natural disasters. So facing challenges and making mistakes is really part of what we do and part of our job. And we actually are measured by how good you are in resolving problems. But the problems will be there. And we know that there's never going to get a day where we're going to be sitting down and saying, hey, this everything's flowing perfectly. I'm like, that's just not going to happen. So we share mistakes. We openly share mistakes. We have the cells have their weekly meetings. They share the mistakes there. They talk about how they can improve, and they could be also ideas or things that they've tried, so that everyone tries to learn from each other, and we can be better by just sharing the experience that everyone is having.
I think cultivating that space where you're sharing your mistakes and that
Yeah.
you're bringing that out into the open, you're making it safe to do that without any sort of reprimand, but like just learning how can we be better in the work that we do. That's incredible, and I think that's a great word for our chief stewards here on the show. I know this time has flown by, Enrique. We're kind of coming up on time here, and I'd love for you to kind of speak them directly about just any words of wisdom you would have for anyone that's a business owner right now, an entrepreneur leading through complicated macroeconomic times, geopolitical, as you said. When you look 50 years into the future, let's not think about the here and now, but let's think about the long term. Uh, what do you hope that people would say about the way in which you've led that you would maybe pour in and kind of encourage our chief stewards to consider as well?
Well, I would like to see a lot of business owners, right? I mean, that's actually something that will be dear to me and something that would make my life worthwhile. If I actually could see like 50 years from now, and again, you're being kind, I don't think I can outlive 50 years, but if I could, I think it would be
We want the business to outlive
looking
you.
back. Oh, the business, hopefully, and for sure. But I would say looking back and realizing that we were able to create more entrepreneurs and business owners, I think like the small, medium-sized business owners in this country and in every country around the world are the key to the economies of the country and the reason why the world keeps turning. So that's something very important. And of course, the other thing to your listeners, it's as you said, it's not easy, right? It's something that it's a day-to-day effort to keep the culture alive, but it is worth it. So if you have a good purpose-driven mentality and you actually focus a lot on the culture of your company, it will be a lot easier to deal with any challenges that you face because you have a good culture. And one of the things that I have learned is in order to do that, you have to let people go. Not everyone is good for your company. Not everyone's good for your culture. And so I think one of the learning lessons for me is you have to fire people quickly. You really do, right? So you find the culture, you find what's important to you, keep it simple. And once you find it, if someone just it's not a good fit or a good match, no matter how much business that person's bringing, no matter how many clients they're operating or invoices they're making, I mean, at the end of the day, it will be more expensive to keep them around than just to let them go.
My sincere thanks to Enrique for joining us today. Isn't he a great leader? His reminder that we're all more similar than different when we lead through values is the exact perspective I think we need in today's global economy. And now here is your steward's call. As always, this is the one key moment I feel you can take from our conversation and put into practice today. Let's demystify your bad news. Identify one project or relationship where things aren't flowing perfectly and be radically honest about it today. Don't hide behind a status report. Be the leader who is the best at giving bad news so your team can actually start solving the problem. Remember, building a legacy isn't a future event, it's a daily practice. So what you do today will shape the impact you leave behind. Thanks for being with us, and go be a leader worth following.